Namaskar, everybody. Happy Sunday, November 13th. And it's great to see all of you, well, remotely. I'd like to check in and follow up on my promised posting for today, continuing our study of these incredible yoga vidhi or ritual texts on the original practice of the chakras, as this is now coming down to us with some great illustrations in some of these manuscripts, like the Tara Puja or Tara Vidhi text that we've studied in the last two sessions. So first, I want to take a look at some of your feedback and propose that we take a slightly alternate route in terms of our study here, because we all have busy lives. I thought it best perhaps to do a poll of, not a poll, but a survey of questions, to receive questions from you on what you want to learn the most about chakras, what you want to dive deeper into regarding the practice that may or may not involve the chakra part that we've been looking at. What is it about your study of Kundalini and the chakras that most fascinates you, that you want to ask questions about? And then I'll set up a live Zoom webinar for Wednesday, 6 p.m. That's in 3 days, right? Today's the 13th. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the 16th. Is that right? Yeah. So Wednesday, 6 p.m. You don't have to attend live. It'd be great if anybody wants to. But if you can't, or even if you can, either way, please send me questions in advance that might come up through checking out what we're going to review now. I'm going to go over a couple of fine points from last week, some of your responses in terms of comments from, not last week, but last session, from our last webinar, and we'll take it from there. Okay, let's share screen. Okay, so again, if you have not had a chance to check out part 2, please do so. It was pretty exciting for me, and I got a lot of emails back from you guys about it. And that's part of why I want to pull together a plan here in terms of where we want to dive into most directly here. So one of the things that Chris Jones points out here, asks about, is something that I've heard quite a bit in my lifetime. And it's a really important topic: the relationship of the Mahabhuta, meaning to say the great elements of the universe, and how they manifest as the 5 elements of this body. Their correlation to the chakras, Chris mentions, and their cognate associations, because this is both in Buddhist and Hindu thought, right? Of course. Okay. And let's see here. Oh, a couple more comments here. How do I look at all of them? Good. Oh, yes. And then, of course, and this is interesting how this will all tie in. I mentioned that I'm interested, if you are, in posting clips or full episodes of my current UC Berkeley course on the history and evolution of yoga. And there's ways to do this that would not violate any, contract I have with the university. So I'm going to add in a later post today, either part or all of my last session, which is part of the semester now, where we're beginning our study of the Bhagavad Gita. So we'll look at that in just a moment. But first, let's tackle this chakra business here. So what we're talking about, in terms of this practice is pretty much where we paused last time. Let me go to the YouTube of it here. This is the clip. This is a pause of our last part 2 webinar, in which I go deeply into the actual formation of the seed mantras that are used in the practice, in the 3 or 4 part pranayama practice. So we looked at some of the source texts. Well, actually, the source text of this Tara Puja manuscript that you see behind the Word docs here, right? So this is the typed in version of the, let's go to original folio. So this is the folio of the original text, and this is its typed in version, real heady academic stuff. But the cool part is we were able to isolate the actual passages that identify the seed mantras used in practice. Remember, up till now, seed mantras have been absolutely obsolete in our study of this tradition. Nobody knows what they're for anymore. There's not going to be any course that you'll find that actually engages the original text on how this 3-4 part pranayama worked with these seed mantras. And specifically, as Christopher points out, what the relationship is to the chakras, right? And how the universal 5 mantras of water, fire, air, space, and what did I miss there? Earth, water, fire, air, and space are invested in these strange looking shapes that are then superimposed on these so-called chakras. What are these chakras? How do they get to be in the body? What's the one-to-one correlation? So this is the kind of thing I want to field questions on for our next basically Q&A webinar or seminar on Wednesday night. What kind of questions do you have along these lines? Okay. So in our last webinar, this is part of the PowerPoint from that webinar. We're looking at the practice called Bhuta Shuddhi. Actually, not a practice so much as an alternate title to daily tantric Kundalini chakra yoga practice. In other words, it's a more accurate title because it gives the sense of what we're accomplishing by doing this practice. That is to say, have you ever heard the phrase stuck chakras, right? The idea that we have these centers in the body that somehow need to be unstuck because they've been coagulated with God knows what. This is really a Western invention that's not completely inaccurate, but it's mostly inaccurate. The concept of a stuck chakra is a Western invention that starts from Carl Jung's novel, but somewhat misdirected early work on this material as it came to the West in the 1930s, particularly through Arthur Avalon's works, The Serpent Power, etc., in which nobody could really understand what the science of this yoga practice was, right? And there's all sorts of YouTubes on this, clips where I talk about this history. And also in the Chakra course part 1, which is available to everybody on this Patreon site, I go into the Jungian and Avalon background. But needless to say, this idea that these are actual centers that are somehow lodged along the central channel in the body is a misnomer. It does not, there's no text that teaches this. The idea of chakras represents, or the term itself represents a movement, right, of the universal power, which is sonic ultimately. And I'm going to just stay zoomed out here for a moment, this kind of gallery from my Dropbox folder, so you can get a sense of multiple images. But the seed point of the universe at celestial north, right above the sky, the head, the point of the Brahmandra, the whole universe is spiraling, right? But the understanding in these ancient texts is that the 5 elements which make up the universal spiral, right, that form the universe out of the seed point of Om, here analogized to, and I love this image here, to the beginning and the end of the universe, universal destruction and creation that happens over vast eons of time. Well, when you attune with your divine self, time is transcended. So you experience all moments of time almost aloof or apart from it. And what you recognize here, what is taught here, is each of these spiral arms comes from the source point of the universe, which really isn't a point, but rather the epicenter of where the point of the middle of the universe looks like to us from Earth. And to these ancient astronomers, is basically the point, the zenith of the summer sky in early August. It's also the birth date of Krishna, where you see Vega, the former North Star, directly overhead. That's what's depicted here, or what the tantrics would depict as that universal seed. That obviously, being connected to all beings, we are a microcosm of the universal. So the 5 elements spiraling out of that seed spiral down into the body and become, and this is the Kundalini river we're talking about in our study last week, but they become these knots or grunties, which represent the 5 elements. That is to say, when we open our eyes embodied, once this creative process happened at birth, and which can be recreated through this yoga in this practice of Bhuta Shuddhi, we re-experience the fresh, let us say, immersion of this stream of light and sound that reestablishes in this daily practice of Bhuta Shuddhi the 5 elements without the same stuck energy that they've accumulated through living in unhealthy ways. So the stream of sounds, each of which is represented by one of the 5, each of which represents one of the 5 shapes. These shapes are only meant to be visual props, so you can harness the sound. Nobody thinks there's triangles and half moons. It's like the Lucky Charms cereal, like stacked along the central channel of the body, even though this is how they are mapped. So you can imagine early in the artwork, you can imagine in the early period of Western scholarship, if you see something like this, you imagine that these teachers, these texts, actually thought there were these shapes superimposed in the central part of the body. Rather, it represents a fluid movement in which the coagulated essence of the original seed sound, all of which are phonic, all of which are sonic, these seed sounds or these chakra motions are all sonic, are differentiated. Lung is differentiated mentally to me from being, because I'm taught to visualize the square for one and the half moon for the other, and so on. So they're not actual shapes that are stuck here or that are even in the universe. They're meant to be visual props to help you concentrate. When you see the image as you articulate in the single out breath, each round of this practice, each one of these sounds, right? What happens is that rise of uchara practice that we discussed last week is facilitated by the visualization of these shapes. So I'd like to know what you all think about that. Perhaps a couple more spiral images here. We got to take the sort of static look or the static understanding of a fixed system in the subtle body out of the equation, because it's not how they imagined it. Trying to find a good image to depict that. Here's a black and white version of, I don't know what happened to the original I have in color now. You get a sense of the spiraling of the 5 centers. This is supposed to be the axis of the median of the body, right? And as this energy comes down through the Brahmandra as one seed of light called the bindu, the drop, right? It drops down and then boom, fixes here, and then fixes here in our modernized chakra system, then fixes here, then fixes here, then fixes here, right? So the 5 points along the medial channel associated with, let's go to this one for a second, associated with the grunties. These are knots of wheeled up or spiraled up or congealed energetic points in the central channel. So to that end, we do have stuck chakras, but they're not, it's not that something's blocking the chakras as if they're static. Rather, the energy has become stuck. And when that's it. That is it. This is how I'm going to write about it in an article I'm preparing, right? So the understanding then is when we are free of, let's go down to this image here, when the eyes open through ascending each of these through the corresponding grunties. This is a more complex image of a fairly simple process in terms of the 4-part pranayama we discussed, right? You're reactivating the spiral energy that pierces through and frees up what you could think of as dams in a river, right? And when this happens, there's a flowing convolution of the 5 sounds into one. So what had been 5, and this is to your point, Christopher Jones, what had been 5 separate sounds, all of them non-consonantal, so unstruck. Long, ring, rung. Watch my mouth, no touching. Long, ring, rung, yang. All those combined, of course, are right. Home. So is this sound coming down into my body or is it going up? The point is called the pranava, the sound which creates the seed of that is a seed of the universe that creates this reality, can be tapped into at any time in this science, this yoga practice, to reactivate that purifying river of sound consciously. Now, when we're born, it's unconscious. That's how these grunties and blocks form. Now conscious, we are open, we are awake, we are alive to it. So with that, let's pause. And on Wednesday, please have ready any questions if you're live, or send them in. You could send them right here. And this is probably the best place so everybody could see our questions in the actual post. I'm in the middle of making it right now. You'll see it in a moment with this video, but here in the comment box at the bottom, there'll be a comment box. Please ask any questions that you'd like to discuss. You might want to take a moment, if you have any time, to check out the past chakra courses, especially the two major ones. Chakra course number 1, History and Evolution of the Chakras. And that is, let's find that really quick. Well, it's on the page, just so in the search, in the search button or search window, I have the creator's view, so you guys have something different, but search the post right here and you put in chakra course. And I've made these temporarily available, even though they're meant for the $40 tier. I've made them available to everybody, right? Here it is. So you can find these links, History and Evolution of the Chakra. So any questions you might have, you can also go to my YouTube page, which is on here too, which gives clips of it. Please post them in the preview of Wednesday's seminar. And if you can't make it live, I'd appreciate at least one question so that everybody can benefit from why it is you're here. Because everybody that's here is interested in the chakras and the science and Kundalini practice. That's the whole point, right? Not just to support me. So we'll see you Wednesday. And stay tuned for the next post, which is going to answer our question about posting clips and or perhaps a whole series on the history and evolution of yoga from my Berkeley courses. Namaskar.